So when I was working at Game Exchange,
Yeah.
my closing song for me and my boy Sage every night was Watermelon Man by Herbie Hancock. And I would go around with this like dusting wand and like flick the railings and stuff of the shelves and everything. I was like, I don't know why I like this song so much, but it just makes me happy.
Well, it's pretty fruity.
I mean,
I like watermelon flavor. You like watermelon flavor stuff?
I don't like artificial watermelon flavor. Like if I was handed a watermelon like Jolly Rancher, I'd probably say no.
Yeah.
But watermelon in general is just delicious.
Yeah.
I actually didn't like watermelon until I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
I had like no interest in eating it without or with seeds and stuff like that.
Were you scarred as a kid? You like accidentally eat a piece? And
No, like I was
seed?
just a picky eater. Like I didn't care
Yeah.
about trying new foods, and since I didn't have, I think the only fruits I ate were powdered sugar on top of strawberries and bananas for years, and grapefruit.
Okay.
But I didn't start getting into fruit until I was in college, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a massive fail on your part.
There's reasons why I was like 235 back then. Like I was a chunky boy. Anyway.
So you could say you're kind of like
I was a tome of a person.
Oh!
Shoot.
Speaking of transitions.
That was terrible.
So this is Once Upon a Tome.
Yeah.
I'm Brett Hendricks.
I'm Bo Hill.
And we're both book nerds.
That's an understatement.
That is an understatement.
Very much
We watch YouTube videos on people talking about books.
My YouTube feed and algorithm is solely based on lectures and video essays. That anytime I show it to anyone, it looks like a depressed middle-aged man is watching something. It's really sad.
Well, I mean, I bet if someone had a camera on you while you're watching it, you probably watch them in the dark, too.
By myself, curled up in a ball with a nice glass of Topo Chico.
Topo Chico! Yes. Topo Chico is...
today's sponsor?
Well, the unofficial sponsor. We don't want to get sued.
That's true.
But we can dream that if this podcast becomes big, they'll get wind of it and we'll sponsor it for us.
If it does.
This
is really just for the lone
with
person.
that, crack open a nice cold Topo Chico.
I always wanted to do that.
So these are, for those of you listening, because you can't see us, these are glass Topo Chico bottles. Topo Chico is sparkling mineral water out of Mexico.
And why do we drink it like this?
Because it's the greatest water ever.
Well, the reason why Brett and I picked this is mainly because we went on a road trip during spring break, and that was the holy grail of waters.
Yes.
So we would travel like late at night in Miami to Winn-Dixie just to find Topo Chico.
Yes.
And that was like the first time I ever had it. So it's kind of like a staple in our relationship or friendship.
Yeah.
So what is Once Upon a Tome? Why are we doing this? What exactly are our rules?
So
yada yada yada. Mission statement.
Bo and I, we've known each other for a couple years now, but we just really within the last year started hanging out. We both found out that we both love two things: classic literature and baseball.
Yes.
So, I'm adventurous, Bo's adventurous, so we're just like, you know what? We got a lot of big books we each want to read. Let's go through them. We love talking about them. So let's just...
It's nice when you have a buddy who can read a big book with you, because we like big books. We cannot lie.
That is true.
So what is the criteria here?
Yeah, so...
we like the guidelines, I guess.
Yeah.
Number one, book has to be greater than 500 pages.
Yes, because anything less than 500 pages is for chumps.
Exactly. That is what you do. Small potatoes is what you do by yourself.
Yeah. Now, if it's part of a series, though, if the individual books in the series, they can be less than 500, but cumulatively they have to add up to greater than 650.
Mainly if it could be read as if one sprawling, story. Like the Deleuze Legend by Kerouac, I guess, could work, or Proust.
Yeah, so if at some point we're going to do Proust's In Search of Lost Time series.
Right.
Which is 7 total volumes. Do you know how many pages it is total? Like 13,000 or something?
Something like that.
Yeah. Something ridiculous. Yeah. So we're planning on starting that in the spring, right?
Yeah, that's going to be the second.
So So it's going to be our summer reading, but because it's so long, we're going to have to start it in the spring.
Yeah, and the new collection comes out, so that's mainly why we're doing it.
So we're also nerds about publishers. So,
that's true.
We know the old adage, like, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, we totally can.
We totally can. In this day and age, in this postmodern world, you kind of have to judge it by its cover.
Yeah, I mean, there are just certain publishers that if you see a book by them, it's going to be good.
Exactly.
Like New York Review of Books, Vintage,
Penguin. Reading House is usually pretty good.
So back to what you said about the last edition, or the last edition of Proust. So, Penguins, they have 6 of the first 6 fully translated, and the 7th is coming out in January. So,
exciting stuff.
You remember how I emailed the customer service about if they're like when it was gonna come out, if they're gonna have a box set.
Yeah, and they were like, yeah, we don't even know when we release stuff or something like that.
It's like, come on, you know more than me.
Don't you work there for a living? Like, you should be just as big of book nerds as we are. Number 2, if a previously read title is chosen, the repeat reader must approve.
Yeah. So this would be. Well, so basically, we had planned this if we hadn't already agreed on something.
Right.
So we actually are currently reading our second tome, but if we don't know which one we're reading, the policy is going to be that we both write a name of a tome on a piece of paper, crumple it up, and have a third party draw it out of a hat.
Yeah, that's number 3, and that third party is Miss Meredith Steinberg.
Yes. Our dear friend.
Dear friend. Wonderful, wonderful human being. Number 4. Literary combatants should have 2 picks for the draw. You need to have 2 selections.
Yeah. Mainstay
and then a supplemental one.
And you may be asking why if you're listening, and that's because it's possible that a pick gets chosen that the other person's already read. So.
Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to read it, then obviously refer to number 2.
Yes. And hopefully we won't need a 3. Yeah. Hopefully we won't need a third one.
Hopefully not. All right, number 5. This is where some people in the future, whenever people actually start listening, will refer to us as pretentious jerks. Nothing by Stephen King or Tom Clancy or anyone in the popular canon.
Yes. That includes Clive Cussler.
Yes. J.K. Rowling, no offense. Yeah. But unfortunately, I just don't have time, or, I don't want to read Dean Koontz.
What about James Patterson?
Or James Patterson and every ghostwriter he
basically, I think we could say if you put out a book a year, you're disqualified.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Unless it's like, I don't know. Because we're definitely treading into like, we're highbrow.
That's true.
Mentality here, which is fine. It's just, I don't want to have to read Dean Koontz or anything like that. Like, at this point in our lives, I'm 27.
I'm 33.
We realize we're reading against the clock, and our impending doom is coming at some point. So we want to read things that challenge us, not only as readers, but as human beings. And Stephen King, and, no offense, he's a prolific writer. He has some good stuff. It's just, I don't know, not for me. Never saw.
Well, I think too. I mean, I can't speak for you, but one of the reasons I only read classics is that, you can read anything, but I want to read things that have stood the test of time. And if I already know it's a classic, it's widely regarded, highly regarded. Mm-hmm. Stuff's been written about it for, half a decade or half a century, centuries. Like, if nothing else is going to be culturally relevant, it's a conversation piece.
100%. And hold on, we'll come back to that. Let's read 6 and 7 are pretty quick. 6, once the book is cracked open, it has to be finished. We are completionists.
Yes.
I will not sleep at night if I don't finish this book.
That's like with anything for me. I can't start a book and not finish. Even if I absolutely hate it, you have to finish it.
What was the worst book you ever read that you had to finish anyway? Or, hold on. What was a book that people said you must read, like it is a must-read classic or whatever, that you just didn't like but finished anyway?
Oh, As I Lay Dying.
What?
Yeah. But like as I mentioned previously, I'm gonna give it another shot. So
there we go. Faulkner's really good.
Yeah.
I like Faulkner.
I'm a fan of the Southern Gothic writers, so I should have liked it, but that was like a long time ago. So
is Southern Gothic an underrated?
Oh yeah.
Really? I feel like most like essential reads are Southern Gothic, like To Kill a Mockingbird, Capote,
Flannery
O'Connor,
William Styron, Sophie's Choice.
Yeah, or Faulkner.
Yeah.
Would Steinbeck be considered that?
No. Steinbeck is
Walker Percy.
Walker Percy, John Kennedy Toole.
Yes.
Which will
that would be a good episode. Is our conflicting viewpoints on Confederacy of Dunces.
We'll talk about him in our other podcast.
Yes.
So
anyway, okay, number 7. Tomes must be a work of fiction. I'm not gonna read a 1,000-page philosophy book as much as I'd like reading philosophy. I think that would be like textbook territory. You know what I mean?
Same with like biographies.
Yeah, like there's a lot of 900-page biographies about every president ever. So why would I want to read about Grover Cleveland? I'm sure he was a wonderful. Was he? I don't know.
I don't actually.
Which one got stuck in the bathtub?
I think it was Taft. Wasn't it?
That was Taft.
Taft, the fat man.
Yes. Laffy Taffy. That was so bad.
I bet he wasn't Laffy when he got stuck.
Oh, of course he wasn't. Anyway, what were we going back? What was I going to go back to earlier?
Must be a work of fiction.
No.
Has to be finished.
Well,
you know what? We're old men, so the thought that we just forgot will come back to us at some point during this conversation.
Unfortunately. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the indescribable
Infinite Jest.
Infinite Jest.
By David Foster Wallace.
The great David Foster Wallace.
So just right off the bat, what are your initial thoughts on it?
Sprawling, chaotically beautiful, dark, and hilarious. It was like the most challenging read I've ever had, next to As I Lay Dying. So
yeah,
solid 10 out of 10.
Yeah. For me,
9 out of 10 maybe.
Yeah. For me, this has to be a top 5 book I've ever read.
Really, top 5?
Top 5.
I would say top 10.
I would say it definitely wasn't the most enjoyable book I've ever read. I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. But, it's not up there with other things I've read. But from a pure mastery of the English language, it is just crafted so well that I can't even think of anything else that could compare stylistically to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole book is, David Foster Wallace having conversations with himself, by himself. Like, every character is essentially Wallace.
Yeah, he's talking through his characters.
Yeah. I mean, no character has, differentiating traits or, I guess vernacular. They all are witty, all banter back and forth, and they all leave enough information out. They go around whatever it is that they're supposed to be talking or communicating about. So, yeah, I mean, dude was a master with the language. And that's what I like about good writing. And here we go.
Yeah.
Why do you like classics? And, I like classics and I like hard literature because I want to see what someone can do with our, with the English language. Like, we have such a limited way of describing our reality and our existence that I would love to see what people can do with that, And David Foster Wallace, fortunately or unfortunately, was a master at that. Yeah. So give a little bit of background.
Yeah, I mean, during college, may have even been when he was growing up, but he used to just go to the library and just read the dictionary.
Yeah. Yeah, his parents were both academics, right?
Yeah.
Both professors, so he was a philosophy major at, Harvard or something?
I think he was philosophy and math, if I recall, right?
Maybe. I think so.
Yeah.
But, man, it was full of tragedy. suffered from addiction, depression.
No, those are all themes that come out
And those are
in the book.
Oh my God, yeah.
Um,
I mean, he was a very, I don't know if you could say he was a tragic person. You know, maybe he was.
yeah.
It's a slippery slope because the man is also problematic to some people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know he hurt a lot of people. I haven't read his biography or anything, but that's something I'd definitely love to do.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I mean, going back to, like, you know, him reading a dictionary, like, so, you know, in the novel, there are, like, 394 footnotes,
Yes.
like that?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, there's so many words in there that I don't even know.
Well, some of them are, like, ingredients to painkillers or...
You know, some of that, and then a lot of our
and
medical terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the way he wrote the book was such that, you know, he challenged the traditional construction of a novel in the sense you have that with all those footnotes, it's almost like a second dialogue to keep flipping back and forth. And I think the ideal way he meant for someone to read this would be to look up every single word that person doesn't know. And if you were to do that, it'd take you years to read it.
Well, yeah, and, you know, tennis is like a big deal with the book, right?
Yeah, because he played it as a kid.
Because he played it as a kid. Like, apparently he was really good. He says his peak was early high school.
Yeah.
He finished like 11th in Central Illinois tournament or something in high school. But, I mean, the whole book is kind of structured like you're combating him as a opponent in tennis. Is like, you're going to have, if you're going to read my novel,
Yeah, you have to
you're
earn
going
it.
to earn it and you're going to meet it on my own terms.
Yeah.
And if you want to consider yourself a serious reader, then
Yeah.
it's
And this,
painful.
This
but-
is serious literature. And,
yeah.
you know, I think, I forget which site it was, but I know it was one of the links you sent me before going into it that said, like, you know, you have to prepare yourself to be frustrated for the first couple hundred pages.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that you don't realize until you get to the end of the novel, is that the ending is literally the beginning of the book.
I mean, we didn't even realize that.
No,
until we started
I-
doing some, like,
Research, and then I was like, dang it, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I thought I failed the critic in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I like reading about, in an interview, Foster Wallace was asked about the structure of the novel, and apparently he got it from a Sierpinski's gasket,
Okay.
or Sierpinski, what is it, fractal,
Okay.
right? So it kind of looks like a Triforce.
It's like a math equation,
goes
right?
in and
or
on
like
of itself, yeah.
engineering thing or something.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's a equilateral triangle subdivided recursively into smaller equilateral triangles.
Okay.
Right, it just divides upon itself. I think that's rather interesting, and I would love to see somebody have a diagram
Yeah.
that connects each of its crazy narratives.
I mean, I'm sure someone's done their doctoral thesis on that.
We have it on the table.
No, but I mean on that.
But that's about Sartre, I guess.
Yeah.
But on that, yeah. I mean, mathematics is a big deal in Infinite Jest.
Yeah.
Anytime a kid asks me about, like, why do I need to do slope, intersect, form? And I'm like, well, what if you play eschaton?
Yeah.
You need to know. And you also need to know foreign politics to do that well as, you know.
Yeah.
But
So I guess we should probably talk about what is eschaton, since you just
you
threw that
can
out
talk
there.
about it. That was the most infuriating portion of the book.
So there's a section of the book devoted entirely to this game that the kids at the tennis academy are playing. We'll talk about the overall, I guess, story of the book here in a sec. But since we brought up eschaton, so these kids, when they have a day off, they go on the tennis courts and play eschaton, and basically, oh man, how to explain it? It's basically like kind of like United Nations meets tennis meets mat ball meets dodgeball. Is that a good description?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
And it's basically just an insane scene where I think there were sentences that were pages long.
Yeah, and then they were like
Run-ons
making up their own equations on how to
Yeah.
shoot or, you know, do
Best
this.
destroy the enemy.
And it went on and on and on and on and
Yeah.
on. It literally took a near whole afternoon for me just to get through it.
Yeah.
One, because it's not like it was too hard,
Mm-hmm.
jargon-wise. It's just so boring and
Yeah.
so minute in detail.
Yeah.
But then it was...
Well, then what's funny is, like, within those sentences, like, if you just kind of glazed over them, you'd miss something, like, really important that happened. You know, I think Wallace does that a lot. Just he wants to make sure you're paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I have something kind of to, read a little. This is American Writers Museum.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to digress from the eschaton stuff. I don't care that much about it. Wallace was obsessed with what was the good life, a central question of moral philosophy. With the, in Infinite Jest, Don Gately, one of the main characters, former opiates addict, finds himself in the hospital recovering from a bullet wound. And the only thing that's getting him through it is his AA meeting, philosophy, I guess. It's a message of endurance built on the premise that life's suffering can be overcome. Yet Infinite Jest does not make it easy. Also exemplifying Infinite Jest's philosophical core, truth does not come easily and must be fought for. This struggle dominates the narrative from its beginning in the character of Hal Incandenza, who's introduced in a college interview, a silent figure who has been told to keep his thoughts to himself. We're talking about the structure of the novel, and I can only... The way that, like the beginning is the end, and other, like the different time loops and the subsidized time era, and how it's not, on the same level. Like it's always jumping around. Kind of reminds me of somebody when you're having an existential crisis or like anxiety or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and different moments just keep coming back in your life. So it doesn't make sense, going from point A to point B, but A is now A, B, 255, and, but that's kind of how, like, you think, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't really ever think in, at least subconsciously, when your thoughts come to you, like, there's really no particular order to them. They just come when they come,
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, too, he wrote this in a future, so he wrote it to be in the future, but he doesn't actually tell us when. So
yes,
like, so there are a number of years, but they're not numerical years. They're named off of just random things that happen in those years.
Yeah, and there's some limitations, like David Foster Wallace and predicting the near future.
Oh, yeah.
Still thinks that we were going to be using cartridges and discs as our form of and modes of entertainment, while we've kind of gone beyond that.
But he did predict that we'd be able to watch anything we want, whenever we want.
Yeah, Infinite Jest, this is something, I kind of found and wrote down. Warned against the insidious virality of popular entertainment long before anyone but the most Delphic philosophers of technology. Sharing videos, binge-watching Netflix, the resultant neural pudding at the end of an epic gaming marathon, the perverse seduction of recording and devouring our most ordinary human thoughts on Facebook and Instagram. Wallace somehow knew all this was coming, and it gave him the howling fantods, as he would say. I found that in an article.
Howling fantods is like my new favorite phrase.
It really is. I don't even know if we're saying it right either.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the things in the book that I found very timely is when they're interfacing with people virtually, it reminds me a lot of FaceTime, right? Yeah. But in the novel, like, they want to wear masks. Like, they're so repulsed by how they look that they're willing to do anything they can to block it in order to communicate and connect with someone, yet, blocking the only form that they actually have, and that's their physical self. You see that kind of on social media, like people put on all this makeup to look totally different.
Yeah, They use filters and everything. So it's
exactly.
It's really the dichotomy of human nature. We want to be seen, but at the same time, we don't want to be seen.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the paradoxes of the human condition is wanting to be alone, yet not wanting to be lonely. Yeah. You have to give yourself up in order to connect. But if you're just not doing that, then what's there to gain? Yeah. You know what I mean? So that it's very prescient.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of the multiple themes.
The big crux about it is what entertainment does to you. Yeah. Right? Like what is it? The MacGuffin of the book is Infinite Jest, the entertainment.
Yeah.
The entertainment's so
compelling.
So compelling and addictive that you die of pleasure.
So let's back up and actually talk about the basic overall plot of it so people know what we're talking about.
I guess we're kind of jumping around.
Yeah. Guys, this is our first podcast,
It's just something.
Yeah. We're noobs here.
My brain is weird.
So basically, I would say in a nutshell, you can add to this, the basic plot of the book is that, so it centers around Howland Condenza and his family, or his grandfather founded the Enfield Tennis Academy? His grandfather?
House? His dad did.
Yeah, his dad did. So he's with a bunch of other tennis players at this elite tennis academy. And his grandfather was a kind of a self-proclaimed auteur. Mm-hmm. And he created this film that is so great, so pleasurable to watch that people who watch it literally cannot stop watching it until they die. And so, there are a Quebecois separatist group out of Quebec call themselves the Wheelchair Assassins, that they're trying to get a hold of this to kind of use as a weapon so they can become independent. So their goal is they'll get a hold of it, they'll send it to high-ranking people in the U.S. government, and then through diplomacy, diplomatic means, Quebec will be separate from Canada. So that is my take on the very, 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 very 30,000, very basic 30,000 foot view. Maybe you can even call it 60,000 foot view.
Yeah. And you could also say that it is a coming of age story for Hal, and that Hal, out of all of the sprawling multiple characters and timelines, might be the main character, him and Don Gately. Yeah. Those are the two that we follow closely, I think, or else I've gotten it all wrong, which is a possibility. Yeah, and did you mention that the Enfield house for the addicts is close to the tennis academy, so they always go back and forth?
So Don Gately and a few other addicts we get to know are going through rehab at the Enfield house, which is it adjacent to Enfield Tennis Academy or down up the hill?
Yeah, there was another big, just another big section, thick, dense about the location and complete, setting of where each building is, how each building looks, and it's just monotonous, to say the least. At a point, it almost becomes confusing once you boil everything down to its minute detail, because then I just get lost in that detail. But I mean, I guess that's the whole point, right? It's very much a novel about about maximalism, right?
Yeah. Well, I think too what it does is what Wallace does extremely well is he portrays the nuances in life that people often overlook. But that we're all weird. Everybody has their quirks.
Yeah, it's an encyclopedic novel in that kind of Pynchon, Gaddis, William Gass type authors who write about. They don't have a specific world of one character. They try and express reality through these maximal, over grandeur statements, like no one can really do. What is it? There's a really cool. Let's see how David Foster Wallace describes a sunset. In quote, Swollen and perfectly round and large, radiating knives of light, it hung and trembled slightly. Like a vicious drop about to fall. Or viscous? How do you say that?
I think viscous.
Oh, well. Anyway. Talking about something like, as big as the sun, something we see almost every day that people take for granted for. Most people don't write about those sorts of things, It reminds me of Virginia Woolf, one of my favorite writers. She can analyze and articulate how water looks. And it's just like, the most beautiful thing, and now I'm connecting to a beach, shoot. What else?
Yeah, I think, like kind of alongside, I think one of the reasons I enjoy reading a long work is that at least with Infinite Jest, you really get to see the progression of ideas. Like, not as just like next to each other, but like the details of how one leads to the next, and really just fleshes out just all the details that go into it. I think, like I said, I think that was one of the biggest things about Infinite Jest for me, was his extreme focus on the details. I think that's part of why...
Neurotically so, I would say.
Neurotically so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's why it's like... I think in a sense that's why he wrote it the way he did, because you're talking about, like, you have to earn this book. Like, it's a challenge to read. But at the same time, once you kind of get in the flow of it, it is so rewarding.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And I don't think there's been a writer like him since. I think that's one of their appeals.
I don't think there's been a writer like him ever.
Well, I mean he's one of those...
At least in the structure of the novel.
Well, yeah, and we're talking something as subjective as art and writing in general. Like, he's a generational writer, right? Where someone important comes around every so often and changes the way that a novel can be expressed, right? And they're all kind of different, yeah, but they're all like celebrity type. Like, Kerouac did it with On the Road. Dickens did it with his cliffhangers. Dostoevsky did it with his philosophical quandaries and nihilistic.
Yeah, but I will say, like Kerouac, for example, there were other writers in his group. There's just David Foster Wallace. There is nobody in his group.
Like, yeah, but
I guess you could say
Pynchon
and
you do have his boy Franzen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I haven't read any Franzen, but
I haven't either. But I mean, they were still peers.
Yeah.
No writer ever really works alone, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is a quote I picked up. It has been 8 years since Wallace left us, and no one is refilling the coffers of the David Foster Wallace Federal Sentence Reserve. Talking about how much what he can do in one sentence and just run it on and on and on. No one is writing anything that resembles this. End quote. The second shift, 1,600-hour siren down at Sunstrand Power and Light is creepily muffled by the no sound of falling snow. End quote. Or this, quote, but he was a gifted burglar when he burgled. Though the size of a young dinosaur with a massive and almost perfectly square head, he used to amuse his friends when drunk by letting them open and close elevator doors on. We return to Wallace's sentences now, like medieval monks to scripture, tremblingly aware of their finite preciousness. R.I.P. DFW. I mean, yeah, the book and its culture has been kind of taken by what people call literary bros.
Yeah.
So when you read that, there's a little asterisk by people. It's like, oh, you're one of those guys. But it's also a book that most guys probably have on their bookshelf and have yet to open it.
Yeah.
So when you actually do, it's...
Yeah, I mean, why do you think it has that reputation of just like a guy book?
I don't know. Because then we're going to have to go into the whole arbitration about what exactly is masculinity. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet.
Yeah, sure. We'll table it for another time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. Because it is kind of a masculine. I mean, it's written with much machismo, I would say. Like the, point of view of some, female characters are, very, manly, I would say. With a male gaze, right? But I also think it deals with heavy topics that most men, I think, are too afraid to have. So when they see somebody like pretty much burying themselves out there, I think that might be therapeutic for some people. Yeah. I'm not quite sure.
I can see that.
It's not a stoic novel, that's for sure. I don't think it can be a stoic novel if you're writing 1,000 pages worth of, about depression and addiction and stuff like that, and be stoic about it. I'm not quite sure. It is definitely one of the best books I think I really ever truly read. Yeah. And I'm not alone. Like I'm not trying to say like people hate it more than they like it. I would definitely preface it by saying it is one of the best books I've ever read. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend it to most people.
Oh, no. I would not recommend it to the majority of people unless I knew somebody well enough to know that they're a serious reader. Because for this book, I would say with most tomes, I'll recommend to people if they're good. But, like, this one, I would recommend people, okay, before you read it, you have to do research on it and mentally prepare yourself for a grueling experience. Because, it took us, 6 months?
Yeah, there's a review I was reading. Dude's like, I wasted 5 weeks. 5 weeks? You read it in 5 weeks? Yeah. I must be stupid.
Well, I know. We were listening to an interview with Jason Segel, remember? And he's like, because when he was preparing to play Wallace in the end of the tour, he read like 100 pages a week, and so we were like, geez.
I don't know how you can gauge how you're reading 100 pages out of that novel, because there's sometimes where you're reading a footnote and it can last 30 pages.
Yeah, in smaller font.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I think that'd be very doable if you didn't have anything to do in your day.
That's very true. You have some quotes. I have some quotes. Do we want to do a quote off? See what has struck our fancies?
Yeah.
Because we're both suckers for really, really good prose. Yeah. We preface this by saying, well,
we're not full of ourselves, but we kind of are at the same time.
Yes. But I will want this to lead into this question.
Yeah.
In terms of, good writing, prose, who do you consider masters of language?
I would say Truman Capote, William Styron, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Nabokov. Probably Tolstoy.
Those are really good picks.
Yeah, what about you?
Oh.
Don DeLillo.
Oh, yeah, DeLillo is really good.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I would say Kerouac. Very sentimental. I think I view the world the same as him in some regards, and preferably like past. It's all sentimental to me. Hemingway, I know he's a very masculine writer. He's very like abrupt and direct, but For Whom the Bell Tolls is like the most heartbreaking thing. The Snows of Kilimanjaro, like that kind of stuff is amazing. Virginia Woolf is God tier to me. I adore her writing, her stream of consciousness. I don't know if Vonnegut's a master of prose, but I enjoy. I can highlight his works for days because it's all witty and it's all philosophical and in a lowbrow sense. Mm-hmm. Tolstoy, I think you kind of have to say. The excerpts I've read from Tolstoy, it's just like holy.
Yeah, Anna Karenina is unbelievable.
Yeah. That's a heavy It's a lot harder to answer than ask it.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Walker Percy was also fantastic. The moviegoer is really good. I don't know if he's like the best though, but you know.
I've only read Stoner, but John Williams.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I change?
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget I said Walker Percy.
Can you
no disrespect. No disrespect to Walker Percy. Yeah, man. Yeah. That. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
That Stoner took place at University of Missouri. Completely fictional, but
completely fictional. Not the same place. Mizzou kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, John Williams is a master. Talk about a guy who wrote a book literally about nothing. Nothing happens in that book except for a man just slowly going through life. Yeah, it is the most humanistic book I've ever read, and by the end of it, I nearly cried, and I looked at the sun differently, and that's what good literature does. Gosh darn it.
Does Mizzou have anything there in honor of that? Like a
I don't know.
plaque or anything?
I doubt it. I'm not gonna bash Mizzou. Never mind. They probably do. I don't know. I don't know how much people would care though.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the quotes.
But I mean, I especially love it when you're reading a good work and within a quote, the author almost like shares with you almost like a philosophical thought or overtly one of the themes. Like I think for me, tell me if you agree or not, but one of the most poignant quotes in here in the book occurs on page 900, and he writes, quote, "We are all dying to give our lives away to something, maybe. God or Satan, politics or grammar, topology or philately. The object seemed incidental to this will to give ourselves away utterly, to games or needles, to some other person."
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the most poignant quotes of the novel, mainly because I think it's Pemulus talking about like once you give up your addiction, you have to replace it with something
else. Yeah.
So like, what happens when you give yourself over to something, right? Like Bob Dylan says, you got to serve somebody. Yeah. I mean, everyone goes through that. You serve something.
Yeah.
What happens when you give yourself away all the time?
Yeah. And like in the case of the novel, whether you give yourself to tennis, to drugs, like, even when you're off of that, when you're off of drugs, when these guys are like, what do they give themselves away to? I mean, say like Wallace in real life battled addiction and dealt with, being famous and then realizing like he got to where he wanted to be, but then he realized he didn't want to be there and all this attention stuff. And so it's like,
yeah, I mean, this is a guy who was like an intellectual but wore bandanas and really wanted you to know he was just some dude from Illinois, that there was no mystique surrounding him. Like nowadays, people I think really dive into the mystique of David Foster Wallace. And I don't know if that's harmful or not. I think he would have laughed about it. I think he was one of those kind of dudes. So to go about like serving something, and the tennis academy, they try and get the kids to serve tennis and have it be the spiritual transcendence for them. I really wish kids saw sports like that. But a quote about that is, "You can be shaped or you can be broken. There's not much in between. Try to learn, be coachable. Try to learn from everybody, especially those who fail. This is hard. How promising you are as a student of the game is a function of what you can pay attention to without running away." I think that's pretty beautiful. Another quote. This is probably my favorite quote of the novel. I have a lot more, but this one is especially hilarious to me. Hal asking, "Mario, what do you get when you cross an insomniac, an unwilling agnostic, and a dyslexic?" "I give. You get someone who stays up all night torturing himself mentally over the question of whether or not there's a dog." It's pretty great, right?
Yeah. That's the thing too. Like, there are so many like lines in there that are hysterical. So many scenes are hysterical. Oh, yeah. But on the flip side, there are ones that are just so distraught. you know.
Oh,
So,
that's where some of the most horrific things in the novel happen sandwiched between hilarious moments. And maybe that's one of the most infinite jests of the book.
Yeah.
I just said the title. So it's hard when he says, like, I don't see why people think it's funny. It's like, maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Who knows?
Well, I don't think he wrote it to be funny. Like comics write a joke to be funny.
Right.
You know, I think he wrote it probably to be quirky, but he just looked at it like, because even though it's completely fictional, there are elements of reality to the characters. Like we are all super weird, super messed up in our own ways, and you know, I think that's probably another theme. It's like no two people are exactly alike. Like every person is jacked up in their own way.
James Wood said even the flat characters,
Yeah.
you know, of this novel are given more dimension than most people's main characters. You know, what is another quote you have?
So the one I'm going to say next is kind of a longer one, kind of more poignant one, for sure a deeper one. It says, quote, "Make no mistake about people who leap from burning windows. Their terror of falling from a great height is still just as great as it would be for you or me standing speculatively at the same window, just checking the view. I.e., the fear of falling remains a constant. The variable here is the other terror, the fire's flames. When the flames get close enough, falling to death becomes a slightly less terrible of two terrors. It's not desiring the fall, it's terror of the flames. And yet nobody down on the sidewalk looking up and yelling, 'Don't' and 'hang on' can understand the jump. Not really." And so knowing what we know now about, you know, how he committed suicide, you know, it really makes you think, like, you know, he was dealing with depression during this.
Yeah, and I can only empathize, you know, sympathize when there's another quote kind of going off to bounce off that one of, I'm screaming for help and everyone's acting as if I'm singing Ethel Merman covers when he's talking about the DMZ thing. Taking that out of context, stripping it from its page, you read that and you're like, you know, you think about somebody like Robin Williams.
Yeah.
You know, people who are funny all the time to their friends, but there's like a silent cry for help somewhere. Yeah. And I can only think about that when you say your quote and you see that, you know. Let's see. I got a good one.
Yeah.
Almost nothing important that ever happens to you happens because you engineer it. Yeah. Destiny has no beeper. Destiny always leans trench-coated out of an alley with some sort of psst that you usually can't even hear because you're in such a rush to or from something important you've tried to engineer.
Yeah, I had that too.
That's so good, right? Sometimes human beings have to just sit in one place and, like, hurt. That's another thing. He uses like a lot. Yeah. You know, and I do that too in conversation. Bet you if you tallied up how many times I said that word, you know, it'd be over triple digits. That you will become way less concerned with what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do. That there is such a thing as raw, unalloyed, agendaless kindness. That it is possible to fall asleep during an anxiety attack. That concentrating on anything is very hard work, which is concentrating on anything, you know, the mundane aspects of life can be challenging, I think. We've had that talk before.
Oh, yeah.
What passes for hip, cynical transcendence of sentiment is really some kind of fear of being really human, since to be really human is probably to be unavoidably sentimental and naive and goo-prone and generally pathetic.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Read it one more time for me.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, yeah.
Tip of the tongue, teeth in the lips. What passes for hip, cynical transcendence of sentiment is really some kind of fear of being really human, Since to be really human is probably to be unavoidably sentimental and naive and goop-prone and generally pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of our lives and our actions are spent really just doing pointless things. And so in that sense, we are kind of pathetic. I mean, objectively, if you look at somebody's life, like just their day-to-day things, there's really no point to any of them.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at people from like a 30,000 foot view, it's like a lot of the stuff they do. You're like, what's the point of that? It's just,
Well, I think that goes one of your last quote. Read that because I think that kind of plays into
the one I just read before about
your last bullet point.
Oh yeah, it says, quote, "Our attachments are our temple, what we worship now, what we give ourselves to, what we invest with faith. Attachments are of great seriousness. Choose your attachments carefully. Choose your temple of fanaticism with great care."
So, I mean, that's just like consuming culture in general, right?
Yeah.
Celebrity culture, maybe not being attacked that per se, but I could use that in a, argument I would have with somebody at a dinner table about like why celebrity culture is toxic in general. Because you can't you're giving yourselves away to these people who are just as fallible and just as moronic.
And the people who don't care about you.
And they don't care. Like they just want bums and seats at the end of the day. That's all they want.
They want to be entertained.
Yes. Mindless entertainment. And that's pretty much what Wallace is talking about here.
And in real life too, growing up, he had an addiction to TV.
Yeah. I mean, it's
essentially, TV is pointless. It's mindless. And so he even deals with that. Like, I think as he was growing older, like he has this addiction to TV, but yet he's this great intellectual.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think James Incandenza, right, is a wannabe director. Like he's a physicist or something, like a scientist who creates this whole
and he sells
wasteland.
It, right? And with the money he founds Enfield Tennis Academy, right?
And makes this like prolific, footnote-worthy filmography that all is like base meta critiques about popular culture, but they all have some hidden meaning to them. Yeah. I remember reading it, and you're like, I'm just going to skip that footnote. And I had already read it, and I was like, nah, there's some hints underneath there. You're definitely going to want to read that. And you're like, oh, yeah. Holy smokes, that was good.
Yeah. Let's see what else. This one, it's a short quote, but it's very succinct. It says, "The truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you."
Yeah, that's a big one from there. That one, and then everything I've ever touched has claw marks on it. Those are the two biggest quotes, I think, from the novel.
Yeah.
I think that's a tough one. No one ever wants to fully realize their own truth because they'd be hurting too much.
Yeah. Like, especially, like, in the context of, like drugs, these addicts, like the drugs are going to kill them.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to finish them.
Yeah, and in a way, well, there's another we'll lean this. The great and complicated legacy of William S. Burroughs. Addiction struck
from St. Louis.
From St. Louis. Addiction struck William S. Burroughs at mid-century as an encompassing metaphor for many facets of American life. And at century's end, Wallace finds a similar metaphor in the recovery from addiction. While Burroughs dwelled with sadistically on the horrors of addiction, Wallace took on the horrors of withdrawal. Addiction in Burroughs was largely a response to the need to conform in the Eisenhower 50s, while in Wallace, addiction is a response to stress, to the need to excel in the Reagan 80s. The novel's ethical setting, if not historical one. I pulled this from another article. Okay. Again, like Burroughs, who is named in the text, I should say, Wallace uses insect imagery to heighten the repugnance of addiction and detoxification. Yeah, so even the stuff that's supposed to be helping these people can become addictive. Like at the end, Don Gately refuses his medication to help with infection from that gunshot wound. Mm-hmm. And I kind of have a theory that they kind of slipped it to him because he starts heavily hallucinating his lowest moment all over again while there. And there's a whole wraith thing, apparently. Yeah. That James Incandenza is trying to communicate with Hal because he never got to communicate.
That's a whole other layer. I mean, to really understand this book, you got to read it 2 or 3 times.
Holy smokes. And you go back to the beginning, and then they're pulling out James Incandenza's head because there's a chip in it or something. Yeah. Oh, my Lord. And I forgot about it because I read that part in May. Yeah. And I didn't get to the end until October.
Yeah, and it's like, or
September.
As much of, what's the word? Like, as depressing as it probably sounds like this book is based on our quotes here.
Yeah.
It is funny. Well, it's funny, but I was going to say, there are positive, hopeful parts of it. Like in this quote, it says, "There are no choices without personal freedom, buckaroo. It's not us who are dead inside. These things you find so weak and contemptible in us, these are just the hazards of being free." So he's basically, what he's saying is it's like there are risks and hazards of being free, but that is ultimately the best thing. You don't want to be chained to something. Mm-hmm. You do want to be free, and there are structures you have to put in place to protect your freedom, but ultimately that is the best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I pulled that whole thing with Burroughs from Stephen Moore Review of Contemporary Fiction. Okay. I need to be better with putting in where I'm getting some of these from. I read this article, interview with Hermione Hobby. Oh, yeah. I think that's English writer.
I read the first. You sent me it today. I read the first 2 questions.
The way that she speaks, I really want to read her books. Yeah. We're not allowed to like DFW anymore, partly because his fans are so annoying that they've blighted his reputation. He's come to stand, unfairly, for the worst kind of self-regarding white literary male. And also because, like idiot children who conceive of the universe in terms of superhero movies, we now seem to require utter moral blamelessness for the lives of our writers. Anyway, if it's the job of the novelist to be both an engaged representative and ruthless diagnostician of their moment, who better than him? What a maddening, dazzling document of American pathologies. And the question, I think, was basically if you could review a book, a classic book, what would you read? And she goes, well, I'm not going to write a 600-page review about Tolstoy, am I? So she picked Infinite Jest instead. Okay. I think that's insanely witty. Anyway, I want to read her novel now.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how many she has?
2. Yeah. I don't know the names of them, though. They're on my Goodreads account now. Yeah. Anyway, closing remarks.
Yeah.
Overall,
amazing. There's so many layers.
Yeah,
that I can't even begin to comprehend. Once you think you have an idea of what's going on, you read something online, it's like, oh, that's not at all what was going on.
Yeah, and there's other facets that you can't even talk about, publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah, top 10. For sure. Better than food, I would say. Shout out to my boy Clifford, Lee Sargent. I haven't met him, but when I do, we'll have a good time.
I'm sure we'll reference this in other episodes, but if you want to really, really deep dive, I would recommend the Leaf by Leaf video on YouTube.
Yeah.
What was it, an hour and a half?
Yeah, it's a long one. It's a tome of a YouTube video. It's wonderful. He's got a lot of great things to say.
Yeah, and the guy who did that, let's be honest, he's got incredible bookshelves.
Oh, goals right there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Hashtag goals.
Hashtag goals. He does something.
And then, it's the, 3rd time he went through it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so...
The heck? And he reads tomes, for fun. Like, that's his thing. He loves big books.
Yeah, and he cannot lie.
He cannot lie about it. He has an entire YouTube channel with multiple big book series about it.
So, you're probably going to get a little more out of that, at least a little more understanding of Infinite Jest than listening to this. But hey, we don't pretend to be experts on this. It's just the first time we've read it, and we love literature, so
and we like geeking out about it.
Oh yeah.
My finishing line, and I will leave you with a quote. And this will be the last thing I say.
Wait, we got to talk about what we're reading next.
Oh, well, this will be the last thing I say about Infinite Jest before it's dead in the water. The wise old whiskery fish swims up to 3 young fish and goes, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" and swims away. And the 3 young fish watch him swim away and look at each other and go, "What the F is water?" and swim away. I feel like that sums up everything.
Oh, yeah. It's both completely pointless and yet full of meaning at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. So what are we reading now?
Going forward. So, originally we were going to pick our own choices and have Steinberg Geese select it, but we both came across The Recognitions by William Gaddis.
Yeah. Kind of went into a rabbit hole about the Gaddis movement.
And there's actually a conference about him.
Oh, yeah. When I was looking up Gaddis, at the Wikipedia page sent me to a Wash U link. Yeah. And the Wash U link says that there's, like, honoring his 100th birthday and having a conference this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So I signed Brett and I up for it. Boom. It starts today, I think, technically. But we can only go to the Saturday one.
We're going to have a good Saturday.
Oh, it's going to be great.
We got Gaddis. Felix's Pizza.
And
then Emo Night.
Probably. Tentatively. Depending on how we feel after these lectures.
Yeah.
But definitely we're getting some pizza.
Definitely some pizza, yeah.
We could watch baseball. I think there's a game on Saturday.
Yeah. We'll see
with the way that the game 1 of the Astros-Yankees game went. Who knows?
Yeah. I was going to say something else. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, for sure we'll do an episode after we finish each tome. But since they take, 5-6 months to finish, ideally we'd like to do episodes, I don't know, every other week or something, just kind of talk and shop about what we're reading.
Yeah.
Because we do read other things.
Yes. Oh, a lot of other things. I got
what
3 books total right now.
What are you currently reading?
Right now I'm doing another read through of Paradise Lost, kind of slowly. Yeah. And then I'm rereading Frankenstein for spooky season. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful book. Yeah. Love Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
What are you reading?
So I finished Sophie's Choice the other day.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So good. I'm reading I'm reading nonfiction, but I guess the fiction I'm reading, I wanted to read something small because Sophie's Choice is like 560 pages.
Yeah.
So I want something quick, so I'll read in Herman Hesse's Siddhartha.
Ooh, I have Siddhartha.
Because that's like his seminal work, I think. It's only like 100 pages, so.
That'd be a good one. I might have to pull that one out. I got that one too.
Yeah. So. But I'm always reading like 3 or 4 books at a time, so.
Yeah. I need to finish Frankenstein this week. Yeah. It's not a hard read. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the Recognitions is next.
Yes. So far, what are your impressions of it? Just big picture.
Oh, man. It is difficult and dense.
It's definitely very dense.
But, man.
Yeah.
His page 54 alone had me geeking out. Yeah. Had to set it down and take a little walk because I was having an existential crisis afterwards. Yeah. Whew. I love that. Love that reading.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to read J.R. his next novel.
Oh, no. At this point, we reconquered Infinite Jest. What's stopping us now?
Yeah. I mean, it's all conversation. See, sometimes you don't know who's talking.
Yeah. I'm too afraid to get Ulysses, so.
Oh, obviously, I'm more.
Who knows?
I would read Ulysses in a heartbeat.
Over Junior or JR?
Yeah.
Is it JR or Junior?
I don't know.
Every time I see it on the shelf, it's like Junior.
Yeah. But the clock is winding down. We got about a minute. Any other thoughts?
No.
Yeah.
I can hear the kids' chairs being pushed away.
Yeah, if you guys can't tell, we are recording this in a school.
Yeah.
So it's close to the end of the day. We will not say which school, but for security purposes.
For their own sake.
Yeah, and in case anyone gets angry at us and wants to find out.
Which is probably going to happen. Not a likable person.
But yeah, this has been Once Upon a Tome, and I'm Brett Hendricks.
I'm Bo.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you.